Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reaching the Summit podcast. We got Todd and Tim here. Tim, welcome.
How's it going?
It's going well. We still have that echo issue. Let me see if that has anything to do. So, we're trying a live stream. We don't, now, the good news is, as far as I can tell, oh boy, we got three eyeballs now, Tim. Oh, yeah, here we go. See, now YouTube's making noise. So, the whole point of this, I turned YouTube off now, so we'll stop doing that. We didn't really know what would happen, but we have and that might get rid of your echo too, Tim. But just trying to see for next year if this is something we could use, if if there's some value to it. But Tim, let's jump into the podcast. And the other thing that I'm really curious about is um, if the questions from YouTube are able to be seen on our screen here on StreamYard. But we'll see how that goes. I hope pausing the what the heck? All right. I'm going to get rid of
Yeah.
YouTube altogether on my screen and just see if that I don't know if me messing with the YouTube channel did anything to anything. But anyways, we've got a champion of the Summit League. We know who they're playing. Um I guess I want to start by just kind of recapping the tournament and maybe getting some of your takes on the tournament itself. Anything go not the way you thought it was going to go? What went kind of the way you thought it was going to go? That kind of thing.
I think overall, we both had those two teams picked to make the finals.
Yeah.
So obviously that was can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, sorry. I had the YouTube stream up. I was seeing what that looked like. My bad. Yeah, I mean we both picked St. Thomas and Omaha to be in the finals there. You had obviously picked Omaha. I went with St. Thomas and you were right on that prediction. But I think the crazy things that came in was the rumblings about North Dakota State, and then they got real the day of, and that really flipped a lot of things in that tournament.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah, I mean that changed the whole dynamic. That took a team that could have made a run out of it, and if the rumors are true about what happened, that's too bad. Um, but overall, I wasn't real surprised. Obviously Trayson can go off for those banana games, put up some lopsided numbers, which he did against SDSU. Then followed it up with kind of a dud after that, which is usually pretty par for the course. But no, it was a fun tournament, and it was pretty impressive to see the championship game with no Dakota teams in there. I thought the crowd, given who was playing, was pretty decent and pretty active too.
Yeah, I didn't see final numbers, attendance numbers for the men's game. I know for the women's game, which did include South Dakota State, which matters for attendance. But I believe it was 8,500 fans for the women's game, which I think was the third highest of any women's tournament game for any of the conference tournaments. So that's pretty impressive. It had to be pretty darn close to that again with no Dakota teams playing at all. Um, I think Omaha stamped what we had started to know for at least the last little bit of conference play that they were the best team in conference, and I think in that tournament made that pretty clear. I think every game they played, they were easily the superior team. Um, it's frankly a bummer that non-conference went the way it did because it's going to be a tough one for them against St. John's, and I think if against a three or a four, that could have been a really dangerous team.
Yeah, because all the 1 and 2 seeds this year they're deadly. There wasn't a
Right.
outside of maybe Bama. If I had to pick one of the 2 seeds for them to get, Bama would probably be my pick. But yeah, tough draw for them. Obviously, non-conference matters. Um, but yeah, it was impressive to watch Omaha. They came in with a mission, and I think they always played with that edge on their shoulder or a chip on their shoulder that not everybody was fully convinced. and they wanted to put a stamp on it that they were the real deal. Markel wanted to put a stamp on it that he was deserving of Player of the Year. And even more impressive, the championship game, St. Thomas being on the other side, they're going to the tournament no matter what. And we were both in that press conference, and Markel, I think it was Markel was saying he was actually disappointed that North Dakota didn't win because he didn't want that feeling or that overhead, that thought process. But they played like there was actually something on the line there, and that was really cool to watch how they came out in that game.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't have to do it, but for those of you that may be watching, there's only a few people, but I was about to spray my cat. So if that was something that
and I'm going to
people don't
sneeze a
like,
lot, so this is going to be a great podcast.
they're sorry if that's an animal thing that you don't like, but that sucker's not supposed to be on the counter, and he was taking advantage of my lack of attention. So North Dakota State with the injuries obviously made a big difference. I'm gonna
poking the bear here.
The rumors
you poking the bear.
What I will say is that Jackson Money was absolutely injured and unable to play, and I'm not sure everybody that was unable to play was unable to play.
I think, looking back at it, if Jackson wasn't hurt, I think the folks you mentioned that were healthy or I shouldn't say healthy scratches, but were scratches, I think they would have suited up if Jackson hadn't broke his wrist, because he was in a real deal cast and sling. That was there's no question about that. The transfer portal with some of these guys, they know they're transferring before the tournaments get here, and so they're looking at that big bag, don't want to risk it, and that I hate to say it, but that bit NDSU.
Did I blink twice? That was a team that could, heck, they almost beat South Dakota without those two players, and it was one of those situations where I do think North Dakota State had a chance to disrupt things. Things didn't go completely chalk. North Dakota won in the first round, but overall, the two seeds that we thought would get there, I actually thought North Dakota could beat South Dakota State. So I guess I get to tout that one a little bit. My worry, and I think, and we'll get into this a little bit as we go along here, but I think South Dakota State has set themselves up really well for future years. I think it's just you got a young guard core that if you could control Oscar Clough a little bit, that you had to rely on some young shooters that weren't shooting very well going into the tournament, and it kind of played. Now, I did not predict Trayson going for 50 points, which was a tournament record. Pretty cool to be there to see that.
And he shattered it too. The previous record was 38.
Yeah. And so it was, he made the all tournament team. But that was, I think he averaged 30 points, but that was with one game being over 50. So, but when you have a special game like that, he was on my alternative tournament team. I don't know that there's a ton extra to talk about in the tournament, the Summit League tournament itself, other than if you haven't made it there, it's just worth making that trek. If it's close enough for you, it's a lot of fun. Good opportunity for a family trip if that's something you would this is Tim's flu game. I told him 9 minutes before this started that we were going to try a live stream, not expecting a ton of people just because I hadn't got it out there, but we wanted to just kind of I just want to play around
take her around for some
what we could
stuff
do
next year.
Which one of the nice things is there is an ability to comment in the comments, and so if you have questions, we're more than happy to answer. Omaha 18 and a half point underdogs against St. John's. I would say the positive part for them was St. John's isn't a great shooting team. The negative part is they don't let anybody else shoot well either. They're pretty dominant inside, and even with some decent inside bodies, Josh Strite, Isaac Antakane, Markel Sutton, that this is size they're not going to be used to um, going up against. Uh, with the right matchup, I was really curious. I do think this Omaha, now my time in the seriously following the Summit League is about 6, 7 years. Um, but I do think that this team has some similarities to the Oral Roberts team from the COVID year. Uh, and here's what I'll say to that. You've got the inside outside stars with Markel Sutton and JJ White, who are not Kevin O'Banner and Max Asmus. I understand that. But I'll tell you what, Sutton's not far from what O'Banner was giving with that ORU team. And JJ White sure was a first teamer this year, along with a lot of players that have very specific roles and play them well. And that is where I think those two teams match up pretty well. I like the depth of Omaha, similar to what that Oral Roberts team. So the Oral Roberts team that went undefeated in Summit League play was a great team, but it didn't have Kevin O'Banner, and it showed when they got to the tournament. Um, I'm not predicting Omaha to win that 2-15 matchup. I don't think that will happen. I do feel a little better with this team than I did with some recent Summit League tournament at, participants. What are your thoughts just on their matchup with St. John's?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head with that comparison with ORU. I mean, not quite Kevin O'Banner and Max, but a little bit less. But still, the makeup is there. Veteran team, a squad that's played together, so a lot of good continuity. And if you can play smart on the offensive end, get some good buckets, you can get back in the half court and force St. John's to shoot some threes, you might have a chance. And so I think Omaha's got to have one of those crazy shooting nights, maybe a 30-pointer from Tony again,
Yeah.
to really pull it off. I think it'll be competitive, but like you said, St. John's, they don't let people shoot well. They're very good defensively. They rebound well, and they're coached by a guy who's maybe a Mount Rushmore of college basketball coaches. So I saw a funny tweet today about maybe the greatest quad of coaches, and it could get ruined by a team full of guys that ruin trash cans. Because you got Bill Self and John Calipari in the other game.
Robert, to your point, I like Omaha. I'm gonna do so. I go to Vegas the Wednesday of the start of the tournament through the Sunday every year with a bunch of people that like to spend a lot more money than me, which is nice. It's nice to be able to act like you're a high roller just by being around them. But um, I what I'm gonna do is actually put polls out on the Reach Summit Pod Twitter account, and I'll put my money where everybody's mouths are. We're gonna just see the highest vote in each game of the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament. I'm gonna put money on. I reserve the right on how much money that will be, depending on how smart everyone can be. I do like Tim. I like your thought of I think you get from Markel what we've been getting from Markel. He was the player of the year by the end of the year. He was special. And
Yeah.
maybe not beginning of conference, halfway through conference, maybe not quite the same player, but just a special player by the end of the year. And JJ, watching him live was fun to do because you start to realize how much he can control a game. But obviously, those two players by themselves is not enough. Tony getting hot from the outside would really be big. Isaac being able to hold his own and stay out of foul trouble down low would be a big deal. Isaac at least can put a couple baskets in down in the paint now compared to a month and a half, 2 months ago. a little bit of offensive game. You've seen the growth. Um, and it doesn't help to to Johnson's point there. It's suited for what St. John's will bring. It's in Providence. There, there's going to be a very pro St. John's crowd.
Old stomping,
Um,
old stomping grounds for Patino.
yeah, Patino talks as if he was born in Providence. So um, he it's right in their alley. I mean, I was hoping for. I even Texas Tech would have been a more interesting matchup for me. Um, the uh, the only hope is you get a is with some of these high major teams that have had a great year. They're getting put together so much in one year. Maybe with a little adversity, they get a little tight, and a team like Omaha is playing as if they have nothing to lose because they really don't. I don't predict a win, but I like plus 18 and a half. I do like that.
Yeah, I think they can cover that because, like you said, they're going to play loose, and when they play loose, they're at their best. They're a team that don't slow them down, you know. But I mean, play smart, but play fast, but play smart. And if they can play loose and hit a couple shots early, that it's interesting. Because that team, maybe you catch them looking ahead at who they got to face in the second round. And also, sometimes these big schools, when they're the conference champion, they go through their tournament. Maybe they get a little beat up, playing 3 games, 4 games in 3-4 days, and they have to turn right around where Omaha's been rested and they got a good scout on everything. And so you never know. Things can happen. We always predict who the upsets are going to be, and that's someone completely different. So maybe it is Omaha. They got the making of a team that can be a fun Cinderella. It's not like one of these teams that scores 65 points a game and, mucks it up to keep it close. Omaha, if you haven't watched them, they are so fun to watch. Like you said, JJ, when you hear someone say the word cerebral, you kind of think like maybe not athletic, but they're just very smart and picking and choosing when to go. JJ's athletic and he's cerebral. And you really saw that in person there. And that was a lot of fun to see him live. And that team, they're all playing well. And I wish them the best. I hope they make it. I hope they make it happen.
All right, Tim, you just saw it. Sorry, everybody. I'm just playing with this today. If we could see questions on the screen. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. We'll put up on the screen, and Tim and I will do the best we can to answer the question, or even a comment going forward. Like I said, this is our opportunity to just kind of play around with this a little bit and see if we can change things up for next year and try a few different ways of doing this and give more than 9 minutes of preview that we're going to go live on YouTube next year. So we'll see what happens with St. John's. I do want to talk about a couple. Maybe we'll even try to get through every Summit League team just to recap the season and going forward. But I'm going to start with some of the big news items that we know right now. Oral Roberts finished 9th last year at 3-13. 2 years under Russell Springman. Coach Springman was fired this year. Not a big surprise to me. I know there was a lot of debate in our chat about whether this would happen, given it was only the second year. I think what it probably came down to is yes, it's only the second year, but they were probably reloading all over again. And you just never saw growth from either of those two teams that he had. Is it fair to only get 2 years? That's a whole different question. But I don't know that necessarily surprising. This is the team with probably the biggest NIL budget in the Summit League, finishing 8th and 9th in back-to-back years. That's just not where that program wants to be.
Yeah,
Oral Roberts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. the thing that's tough about what we do is we get to know these coaches, these players, and so you never want to see this happen, but it is the nature of the game that they play, and there is, ORU has a standard, a very high standard. I mean, they had the Sweet 16 run, they had the undefeated season, and they have all the resources in the world to be a really good mid-major basketball school.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the results just didn't show in back to back. And I think that's administration felt like they couldn't lose any more momentum going forward. And they just pulled that plug before it got, that downward trend, kept going, because now you don't have Isaac McBride next year. So, you were able to keep him around for 2 years and you had no success. And that's difficult when you look at, all right, now you don't have him. How are you supposed to have success without him if you didn't have it with him?
So let's answer Robert's question here. Kyan Brown to ORU next year.
Personally, just kind of what I know, I'd say no. Would Kyan take the job if it was offered? Absolutely. I just think ORU, they look for a very particular type of candidate. And Todd, you know what I'm talking about, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds of it, just because it could offend some people. But they look for a very particular type of candidate. I think they'll go with, maybe kind of a Southern Baptist guy. Maybe they go back to the Scott Drew coaching tree, find someone within his, deep roster of former assistants and go that route again. But, obviously Kyan has ties to ORU with his time, but he doesn't have ties to this administration that's at ORU. And so.
Did he just coach there, or was he an alum also?
He was an alum and an assistant.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think they'll want to make a splash too. I don't think we're they'll want to make a little bit of a splash. If you're asking me, would I want Kyan Brown as the head basketball coach of my program? Yeah, I think so. In the chat, everyone from North Dakota State to ORU wants Kyan Brown as their head coach. We have had a chance for a 20 or so minute conversation with him, and it's pretty easy to see why people would want that.
And it's authentic. And I want to say this too. It's authentic. Like, he has that big kind of teddy bear, big boisterous, persona. He's loud, he's big, and it's all authentic. What you see is what you get. And I think that's awesome about who he is as a guy. And he's so much fun to talk to. I mean, you're ready to run through a brick wall after a short conversation with him.
Yeah. So let's go to another or I would say a murky situation, but one worth talking about. Denver.
Yeah.
Ended up finishing 5-11 in conference play, which is, nobody's. Coach Wolbrin didn't start the season going, gosh, I hope we can finish 5-11 in conference play. Like, nobody wants that to be. Coach Wolbrin's still on administrative leave. There's times it feels like that's inevitable that he's going to be fired. Yeah. There's times it feels unsure. I would say the longer this goes, the more it feels like we're going to have a coaching change in Denver next year. Whatever is going on, and just the lack of transparency. And here's the question I will ask. Is Denver the toughest job in the Summit League?
I would say yes. They got a nice campus, nice facilities, but hate to break it to you, but they have an AD that doesn't support their basketball team, and they don't have resources or support on that side of thing. And that's, from what we've heard, is what a lot of this is all about. And I'm guessing there was some sort of, and this is my speculation, I just putting the pieces together. My guess is there was a loud conversation about lack of resources for basketball on both sides. And, Coach Wolbrin is not one to just back down and say, okay, yeah, we'll take what you give us. He comes from a big program. He knows what it takes to win. And they basically sent him off and said, when you're ready to take what we'll give you, you can come back. If you're not, then best of luck to you. That's kind of the standoff they're in right now from what I've put together and what I understand. And just put this out there. There's a Twitter account that keeps trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and hoping a noodle sticks, that keeps saying that Wolbron has been fired. He has not been fired. We can confirm that. He has not been fired. He's still on leave. They are still kind of, it's, divorced parents going through reconciliation. Can they make the marriage work or can they not? And they're getting to a point where they got to make a decision. Can they make this work? Or if they can't, then they got to move on because their two best players have left.
Yeah.
And I think DeAndre Craig probably stays if Wolbron's future was certain. But because it's not, he leaves, and now they're in trouble.
Well, and I think Sebastian Akins is a tough one no matter what.
Yeah.
But I
That was
will
not a
say,
surprise, even if there is no kerfuffle.
right.
That one, I think he would have benefited from staying another year. But I don't think it was that big of a surprise.
Yeah. And what I will say though is the longer that this go, I'm amazed that you haven't seen just about everybody hit that portal at this point. It sounds like um the the yeah, the players are in the dark as much as you and I are. And as that's happening, players are aware of what resources and things are getting put into to a program. And if they don't even know who's going to be around, like I mean, at this point, I don't know. If I'm Coach Wolbron, I might just go. I'll go back, be as an assistant somewhere,
Go
make the
make a
same
quarter
amount of
mil as
money.
a top
Yeah,
assistant somewhere.
and so um, the disappointing thing for us is you and I care about all these teams. I want everybody to be. One of the things that I think was really nice about this year is we had a bump in conference overall this season, and things like this definitely do not help. It certainly feels
No.
like Denver is destined to a 300 plus Ken Palm type team next year, and constantly just trying to reset. So next one for you, Tim.
All
We
right.
have two new coaches for sure. I would say 1.874 with ORU in Denver. We don't have two for sure. Would you bet
Yeah.
the over on 2.5 new coaches next year?
Um, I'm gonna
Robert
go. I'm
Robert
gonna
goes
go.
over.
I'm gonna go over. I'm not gonna predict that second statement, but I'm gonna predict over because nothing's happened at Drake. Hendo obviously was a major candidate for that job last year. Do they restart that talk? Could be. But maybe the end of SDSU's season might have cooled off his profile a little bit. Crutch being the new shiny coach. And we'll see what they do on Friday. I mean, if they have a good show, or Thursday, they have a good showing on Thursday with all the publicity they've got. It was kind of funny. Kyan was talking about how stupid the trash can thing is that he started, and it's maybe become the greatest thing that has ever happened to that university. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
him kicking a trash can before a game because the guys were silent in a locker room put that school on a map.
yeah.
And and so, you know, I unfortunately I don't think reconciliation will happen at Denver, so I think that's two for sure. Um, Nothing's happened there. This is just a weird situation where I think too much damage has happened, and
Yeah.
I don't think that AD is going to budge at all. He likes other sports that don't generate revenue. I'm going to be honest. I'm not even a Denver alum, but I think the whole thing's stupid. You got a great coach, you got a potential good roster, and you just ruined it by supporting a couple of other sports that don't generate revenue. Great job. Smart job by the AD there. But who knows? We have two really good coaches. One might get sniped. Very possible. So I'll go over just to say that someone gets sniped for a bigger job.
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody who's listening is hoping for their coach to be let go, I don't think other than the two we've talked about that's going to happen. If Omaha somehow wins on Thursday, Coach Crutchfield is going somewhere else. I just think there's too much momentum going that way. Henderson's always an interesting name because he comes up just about every year, right? And I do think, like you said, Tim, he was in the one of the finalists last year for Drake.
Drake has not opened, but
Yeah,
it's
right.
sounding like it will.
And so, my point there is just that obviously, even with the cooling off this year, there's a lot of freshmen playing on that team. The guy can coach. People know that. There's always interest. I do think he's not going to take just anything, though.
No,
And
he'll
so
be
that's
picky.
yeah, and can be and should be. But that is not only has that team that school gotten really good at preparing people that play there for a jump to the next level, their coaches tend to get that opportunity as well. So
Yeah.
we'll see what goes there. I think it is only him and Crutch that are looking for a move somewhere else. Now we've been shocked by odder things when Billy Donlin all of a sudden took off and was an assistant somewhere. You never know. Marvin Menzies, I don't know how many more years he plans to coach, but it doesn't sound like he's planning on going anywhere anytime too soon, or at least next season. But yeah, I would probably go over as well on just that question. Um, let's talk South Dakota State. Maybe more prospects. Well, let's talk about what you think for last year, this last year. Did they achieve where we would want them? Did they overachieve? Did they underachieve? And then the prospects going into next year.
I think, with what happened with them is I think we saw a freshman point guard blow up. Maybe not scoring wise, like he had a couple really good scoring games, but if you truly watch basketball, not just a box score guy, you saw Owen Larson go from a true freshman to a veteran savvy point guard by the end of the year. I've said this multiple times. The offense ran through Oscar, but Owen ran the offense. And they had a bunch of guards that could sub in or move to the point in a pinch when he needed a breather, but they didn't really have a true backup point guard. And I think Jaden probably could, maybe Joe could, but just not their natural roles and fits. And it just threw off everybody's timing when he got hurt. And what he was really good at was feeding Oscar in the post. I mean, yeah, he had some wild passes here and there, but he was really good at feeding Oscar the ball, even when he'd get fronted and then have a backside defender come in. He could still thread that into him. And they lost all of that when he went down, completely changed the landscape of that team. They just didn't have the same energy coming into Sioux Falls, but that's a lot of young talent that an off season, if Hendo stays and he keeps that core, we saw what he did with Damon Wilkinson. Can they add another big this offseason to replace Oscar? Yes. Ideally, I'd love to see Oscar return, but that's not going to happen.
Oscar isn't officially in the portal yet, right?
No, but I don't think he's in any hurry. I mean,
Yeah.
My guess is he will be one of those that gets in the portal and says, "Do not contact," because something will already be situated. He's not one of those guys that wants to make a big Twitter announcement, make it flashy. That's just not his persona. So, but he's gonna get paid very well next year, and deservedly so.
Yep.
Um, but
Well,
hey, that's also a recruiting tool that Hendo can use to maybe another transfer from a big school to come in and say, "Hey, look what we did with Oscar."
right.
And
Well, and I think just as a, I don't know that Denver would say this. It's got to be getting frustrating to be them because they've had guys transfer that kind of just transfer laterally. But I think that's the world of mid to low major schools at this point, right? Like
yeah,
you're trying to find JUCO and or freshmen that you can build in your program for 2 3 years, and then if they build enough, they go somewhere different. But you give that recruiting pitch to the next group coming in.
and I think what stands out about the good programs in this league um, is they have the continuity um, of their program. You look at St. Thomas, SDSU, now Omaha, um, NDSU. I want to put them in there, but I can't right now. They just seem to turn over their roster every year. Um, but with those three schools, they have that continuity. And when guys leave, it's because a coach and a player have a conversation that says, "Hey, I just don't know if you could play at this level. I think you'd be better suited for Division Two." Or they develop someone that just went off so much that they went higher. You don't see those teams losing kids because they get mad and transfer laterally and then they get
Right.
lost in the shuffle. And so those teams have adapted to this world and this new world of NCAA basketball. And, yeah, you're going to lose some guys every year, but I think with those programs, when they lose them, it's a good situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm hoping you have a better answer off the top of your head to this question than I do, but here's this one. Current favorite for preseason player of the year next year, factoring in likelihood to be in the Summit League. So we can't just pick them because they haven't hit the portal yet.
Right.
Make that easy on us if we did
I
that.
would. This is a good question. Um, I'm trying to think of who all. The one tricky one is what does Jamar Brown and JJ White do?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the
There's a
two that I could see coming back. And if they do, it's got to be one of those two. But say they move on because they get a nice paycheck, I would say it's going to be between Miles Barnstable or Kendall Blue.
hmm. Yeah, and I'll ask a second question. Jamar Brown feels like the one that I could, if I had to guess, I could see him coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know that the market is like his move would probably be more lateral, and so he sure seems to have a good fit in Kansas City. In his discussions with Coach Menzies, does it feel like they can build something that works a little better than last year? What did they learn from this year?
Yeah.
I can't imagine they love watching Alan Mukeba play at Oakland because that seemed to be a fit that could have been really nice for them. Um,
They
uh,
could have lived up to preseason number one if
yeah,
they had him.
and something just didn't. His playing time went down last year. Like something just didn't fit right. I don't know if it was. I don't know what it was. It doesn't really
Yeah, I
matter.
have no
But
insight on what happened there.
um, and Soto and JJ White is another good example. Like, and then you mentioned the two St. Thomas guys. Uh, I just think they're going to have a chunk of their roster return that's still eligible, and I don't have any reason to believe why they won't be right back where they were this year.
Yeah.
Um, Now the tough part for them does 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 Kendall Blue become the guy more next year if he stays. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
hard thing is it's really hard to be player of the year if you average 12 points a game, which is what it was very balanced for St. Thomas this year.
Yeah.
Um, and so that heck, it was hard to get him on the first team, right? Any
Yeah.
St. Thomas players. Um, the so it is still now preseason is also a voting thing, so
Right.
that may help just because the numbers don't exist yet. So you might get enough people knowing the name, um, and feel like Kendall feels like the best option to be that guy from St. Thomas for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I think with him, obviously their playing style and they're all committed to it. So it's not like they're gonna go rogue. They're all committed to Johnny's playing style. They've all bought in, they know the situation um, with that. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if Johnny has that conversation with Kendall, like, hey, it's okay for you to be a little selfish at times. You can do things that no one else on this roster can do, and we're gonna need that next year. Like he can elevate, he can rebound, he can defend multiple positions. He's one of the best, I don't think people realize he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league,
right.
to go on with his length and athleticism. And,
Yeah, definitely the
if
best
he,
athlete on that team too.
yeah, I mean, he can just do so much when he turns it on and really takes it to another level. It'll just be, is he, does he have that mindset of, no, I just want to play within the team and we ride whoever the hot hand is, or all right, do I need to take over because we need me to take over most games? So we'll see how they decide to roll with that. But either way, you got to trust Johnny Tyra with whatever decision he makes on that, because I mean that dude knows what he's doing.
If Oscar's gone, do you see anybody of that group? I'll put Robert's comment up here just so we can see it. That group returning with 3 years eligibility. Any of them that could jump into that conversation?
I would say of those, it's probably going to be either. Now, this depends on Owen's knee. Is he healthy? Hard to say. Joe has it. He just has to make better decisions. His decision making was not great this year, but he can be a guy that can just flip a game on its head. I like the potential with Stoney. He's just one of those guys where it's not always consistent. He needs to be more consistent with his energy, his effort, because when he's on, he's a game changer. And Jaden Jackson can be he can be a defensive player of the year type guy next year, the way he plays.
Yeah,
Uh, Damon, I think, will just be a solid post. I don't see him. Uh, I think he'll just be a solid Summit League player throughout his career, kind of another Matt Dentlinger going through the process. But
well, and one of the things I'll say about Joe, we remember Baylor Shireman of late
yeah,
SDSU and Creighton fame. Now, Joe had more opportunity because of the amount of young players, but he's certainly got the ability to shoot the ball and score the ball that could make a big jump. Um, and in between your freshman and sophomore year, and I know he's a red shirt, but that tends to be that's the first time you see kind of a jump for players that it slows down a little bit for them.
absolutely. Yeah, I think, with the injury to Owen and just some other things, he tended to, force it a little too much, but the potential is there for him to make that jump.
Yeah, I won't belabor this point, but I like the comment. It always does feel tough for St. Thomas to have the player of the year. Again, we already talked about this, but they play balanced, but that doesn't mean Coach Tower doesn't see that somebody could be that guy. And you only have to go back to last year with Raheem,
Yeah, I was
where
just going
you
to
had a
say
guy
that.
that was kind of a ball control guy on that team.
Yeah, I could see, because they don't have that, with losing Drake, they're going to have someone step up and make plays and not just, uh, you know, give way to others all the time. Someone's going to have to step up. And I think Kendall can do what Raheem did, last year, but much better.
Right. Yeah. Well, we haven't talked USD, and I want to ask a question to you of USD. Big change in style. Coach Peterson made it really clear that that's what he wants to run going forward. He wants to put pressure on people. He wants to make it happen. I love the idea. It's so fun to have a team that plays with a different style that we're not as used to. Um, can you do that? Overturning the roster like this, though, and I know that wasn't all by his choice, but Chase at the beginning of this year, Chase and Dre Bullock,
It
he
would have
didn't
been
know that
done.
he'd have them back, right? And so now
Yeah.
there's some changes with some of that. Um, but so that was kind of all always the thing, at least going into this year, that they were going to change to that style and then kind of reload. And my concern is it seemed to take them at least half the year to start getting that down.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it's a style that can work if you had continuity, you
Yeah.
know, if you had an Omaha roster that stuck together for 3 years, or an SDSU roster from last year that stuck together through all those years, or St. Thomas one that stuck together. I think it can happen, but yeah, flipping a roster over every year, that's gonna be tough. I think you got to go back to, take a page out of Crutch's playbook. Focus more. I know the portal can be very uh, seducing, wanting to get these high profile guys, but I think for PD to do what he wants to do, go get some JUCO guys, some keep recruiting high school hard, and get these guys that are going to play for you for 2-3 years that can then pass the baton on to the next group. Not continuing to bring in portal guys that are 1 year, one and done,
Yeah.
essentially. I think it can. You just need guys to stay.
Well, and the tricky part is like I think even at this, especially at this level, maybe the portal is where you grab a couple of pieces you need. So like I like Isaac Andekane as a big that they knew they needed to add some size in Omaha, but you have to build them around um, what you've already got. And so it's weird to see like Caleb Stewart go from their leading scorer to a guy who now it sounds like he was battling an injury, but a guy that kind of fell behind in the guard mix this season.
Right. Is he back next year? I can't remember his
He's
eligibility.
a junior, I believe. I'm looking it up right. No, he's a senior, and I don't think
Okay.
he was a
Did he play
JUCO guy.
JUCO?
So of course, just as we got through um, the COVID years, they added another year um, that that is confusing because certainly nowhere on a quick reference does it show if a guy played JUCO, and I don't think Caleb did, so I think he might be done too. Now they do have, and Johnson asked the question here, but I'll be honest, of the four guys, five guys, there's a Jalen Hayes, Evan Anderson, Porter Einen, and Oliver Kokel. I don't know anything about any of them. Do you know anything about?
I don't. Ever since the portal era took over, I used to know the high school prep scene like the back of my hand. And like I researched all these high school kids that the teams would recruit and bring in, but then it was just kind of a lost cause after everything switched. And I think the Porter Iden kid is a top prospect, but I don't know anything about his game,
Hey,
unfortunately.
Tim, keep talking. I'm gonna run and plug this in.
Okay. Yeah, I sadly I don't know much about their freshman crew. Obviously, they had guards this year that they could, sit those guys out. So maybe the year off or the year redshirting, being in the weight room, getting reps, learning PD system should certainly help with that continuity aspect. But yeah, I just don't know enough about their freshman group, what their level is, what their style is, even if they fit PD's play.
Yeah, I wish I could help there too. The one thing I will say is, uh, Coach Peterson is committed to running the style. So you could argue that he knows what he's got in some of these young guys. that at least they can do something similar with them and by adding a few pieces around that. And he was saying that, well, I would say it must have been pretty common knowledge to him that Chase Forte was going to hit the portal, that Dre Bullock was going to hit the portal. It just felt, now looking at how quickly they entered the portal, it was a farewell. Sometimes you can tell when it's a farewell speech
Yeah.
for some players. Um, and all right, we'll quick fire because we're 50 minutes in. We appreciate people that have asked questions, and
Yeah,
this
keep
maybe
firing them. This is fun. I
I
liked
think
it.
what we'll actually give some warning next year and try to do this a couple different formats just to see what we can do a little different, and maybe I can even learn how to do some more things than just put one banner at the bottom. I'm real proud of myself for that. Um, but let's quick fire on a couple teams. North Dakota, I would say
uh,
probably disappointing year this year. And
yeah, I mean, obviously they
obviously
lost.
Trayson is in the portal. Amar is in the portal. They're restarting again.
Yeah, they'll bring back Mir, Panoam,
Yeah.
Eli King. I really like Zach Kraft. I really do. Yeah, he's got a ways to go defensively. Needs to work on a few things, but I really like what he brought at the end of the year. And these Curtis twins from the Twin Cities, I tell you what, we have not seen players like this come into the league as freshmen. They
No.
are all of 6'8", and their wings, they're athletic. They're going to be fun to watch. They don't expect them to stick around long, but um, they do need some size, though. They do need to go get some bigs. They were, you know, Amar's a great post for the Summit League, but he's not a big guy for a post.
Well, and Amar took a step back. It just I had said this on a previous podcast, but there was like last year it was just constant the offensive rebounding and the things he would do effort wise. It just wasn't either teams figured out how to mitigate that a little bit, or it just wasn't quite the same this year. Um,
Yeah,
so another team that's probably going to have to dip into the portal some. I'm really fascinated, not just for North Dakota, but I keeps feeling like for whatever reason the JUCO guys tend to stay around a little bit if the team wants them back. Um, I keep wondering if that's kind of where Summit League teams are going to start filling their roster because you've got a couple years, and now that those JUCO guys know they at least get one of those years back. You maybe get 2 years of them playing in the Summit, 2 or 3, and still going and cashing if they really hit somewhere.
yeah,
So UND, I will say UN next year for UND feels like kind of they can't finish 5-11 again.
yeah.
Like
It's a make or
it's
break year next
yeah.
year for them, that program, that staff,
You,
for
you
sure.
can always feel with fan bases when the rumblings are starting to catch up, and they're catching up a little bit. Um, North Dakota State, another team. Now we mentioned briefly the tournament with them, but another team that's kind of retooling next year.
Yeah, yeah. As far as we know, uh, I will say Andy Stefanovich, he really came on.
Yeah, I
He's
did.
got an exciting future. He should be back. He's just got deep ties to NDSU, so I don't see him leaving. Um, to Javis Miller, if he wants to come back and be the guy, you got him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you think about Tajay? Is he back? Do you think he'll be back?
Our NDSU guys all say he is. I can't say one way or another. I don't know the dynamic there. I hope he is because I mean, he got six man of the year deservingly because of just how he played, being a spark off the bench, being a change of pace guy with all their 3-point shooters. He played more of a power guard position. And, I think Brendan Watkins can come back. And that Trayson Anderson, he had to play in a quarterfinal game. Boy, is that guy huge. He's got a lot of work to do, catching up with the speed of the game.
I mean,
But
in
he
his
moved.
six
He moved.
minutes, he had 6, 7 rebounds, and yeah, you know.
He is big. He is wide. He has got freakishly long arms. He moves well. If he could just get the speed of the game, then you got
Yeah.
Noah Federson. So yeah, they just need to add a few pieces here and there. We'll see where Dave goes and shops, and yeah, they'll be tough again. I don't think you
So
can ever doubt them.
so I'll make you answer an impossible question that we'll wrap up the night with. Um, who's because you just said they'll be all right. Who's best set up right now? Well, actually, I'll ask a pre-question. How long do we usually have to wait before the portal, we can start to kind of notice who's going in and who isn't?
Well, guys can leave it. Guys can announce at any time.
They can. Yep.
It's they can't start committing or like I don't think they can go on visits or committee until the 23rd. I
Okay.
think that's when that part opens.
Do we make it past April usually? Do people keep going into the portal after April?
Occasionally, if someone comes in with a bag because they missed on another prospect
Yeah,
or
that's
another
true. There is a bunch
transfer,
of other things. Good point. Yep.
because it's not like people play by the rules in this game.
Are there
So
rules?
no, there are. I
Yeah.
I I had a great conversation with Coach Hendo, and he's. I was asking him a particular rule um, about NIL. He goes, "Dude, there are no rules anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
everything's free game."
So now to my way too early to answer question. Which three teams are best set up? Which three schools are best set up for next year?
um, I would say St. Thomas
Yeah. Agreed.
and SDSU if Owens knee, if he could get back rehab well and be back by at least, start of January. I think if he's back and ready to go by mid-December, they'll play him
Yeah.
just because he's just too important. And also, you just don't know how much time you have with these kids anymore. You can't anticipate redshirting a kid and expect him to come back.
Right.
So, or play with the guys that are on the roster and expect them to all come back. So, if he's healthy and good to go, I see them playing. I think SDSU will be back in the hunt again. Um, Omaha just depends on. I think it all comes down to JJ White. Does he stay?
Yeah. Yeah.
If he does, um, he'll be preseason player of the year. And outside, they got a ton of guys that would return, could return. Um, and so if JJ White comes back, they're going to be at the top again as well.
Yeah. 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 I think if JJ returns, I agree. I'd probably sneak North Dakota State in there just because of history. If it
Yeah.
wasn't, if JJ leaves, um, and of course, who knows? Like Oral Roberts with a new coach could
Who
bring
knows?
in
Could flip
seven
it.
really fascinating players that we weren't expecting. But though, I got to see that work in the Summit League before I get too excited about that.
Right.
Um, we just haven't really seen it. Um, the UMKC that they definitely zag when other people zig. So we'll see. I one thing I will say about KC is I just feel like Marvin Menzies is one of those guys that goes, all right, like we learned this from last year. I I this year was rough, but if they can get Jamar Brown back and build I mean, Jason Petty, there's they got to figure out something different inside.
Yeah.
Um, they just have to. But Marvin Menzies is a good coach, and if
And
they
they
get
need to figure out an offensive system somehow.
yeah,
Even if
yeah,
it's a simple one, they need to figure
yeah,
out an offensive system
yeah, it
because they
can't
don't
just be
really.
Chuck three. The amount of times they get after a quick start hitting some threes, and then all of a sudden I'd say to you, well, wait, it's gonna cool down, and then it would
Yeah.
just yeah,
And that worked last year because they had rebounders that could go up and get
right,
offensive
yeah,
rebounds. They didn't
yeah.
have that this year.
How crazy is that Jeff Ngandu played in Canada, not a Canadian pro league. He played college basketball in Canada.
Yeah,
I,
like out in Nova
I
Scotia or something.
you could use Jeff Ngandu just to grab rebounds. Yeah,
I mean, he single-handedly beat St. Thomas 2 years ago by offensive rebounds and putbacks.
yeah. They went they went with all that size 2 years ago, and then kind of a whole different thing this year. So they zagged themselves to second year. Um, the what I'm encouraged by, a conference finished 16th this year, which is a pretty high finish in Ken Palm for the conference. We named off those top three at Omaha in as a fourth squad because even without JJ, I think they're pretty solid if they can keep the core together. Um, if ORU can retool, next year could look like another up year for the league. And the one thing I'll say to the league as a whole, non-conference matters. Crying out loud, St.
Oh yeah.
Thomas, South Dakota State, and North Dakota State all would have been seated higher than
Yeah.
Omaha. And there's no way just watching the way we did that you could say those three teams were better than Omaha, even if Omaha would have tripped up in the tournament. And so
Oh
by the
yeah.
end of the year. And so like it just matters what you do in non-conference. You can't lay an egg every time in non-conference.
Yeah, you can't wait till, you know, some of these teams, they can just kind of like, all right, we got to get our paychecks. We got to take
Right.
our licks. But nothing matters except for the regular season. Well, if you win the tournament, yeah, that's cool to go to the NCAA tournament, but is South Dakota State content with just going to the tournament? Is North Dakota State content with
Right.
just going to the tournament? Or Roberts content with just going to the tournament? They're not. They want to go get a good seed and win. The only way you're going to do that is by, getting a couple good wins in non-con.
Well, and this year mattered even though their non-con wasn't very good. We've seen the best team in the league get a 15 in net. The best in net, and the fourth place team in net got a 15 this year. So the last time the fourth place team made the tournament, they played in the play-in. So or did North Dakota State just play in a regular 116? I can't remember.
Well, Oral Roberts was I don't know what their net was, but their Sweet 16 run there, they were the 4th seed.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was the last 4th seed. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they were a 15, but yeah, it does matter. And it matters. Non-conference matters for once you get into conference too, because it doesn't. Like one of the problems for South Dakota State and Oral Roberts when they went undefeated in the league is that the league was so bad, they were going to get a 15 or 16 no matter what they did, and so it's
Yeah,
and
their
then I guess
net
they
went.
kind of like it. I guess it showed in the tournament. Maybe that's where they belonged, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up. I like this as a general thing to do. I like the ability for people to add some questions and some things that we could talk about that we don't think about. We'll maybe look at doing this more next year and see what we can get put together.
Yeah, this
Um,
was fun.
yeah. So thanks, Tim. Now, if Omaha wins a game, I think even while I'm in Vegas, we got to figure out a way
Yeah,
to put
for
something
sure.
together. But I'll bring my computer because I'm that hopeful for Omaha. But but otherwise, we'll wrap up for now. And thank you everybody for a great year. And now, Tim, here's where we really find out: because if we live stream, I'm betting on this being able to save this. If we did this all for 15
You did
people,
hit record,
oh boy,
right?
yeah. No, I don't know what happens next. So sorry if this was all lost in the ether and I have to sit and record it off of YouTube somehow. But otherwise, and we'll try. So Mondays don't work very well for Zach, so we'll try to really get back to Sundays next year as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And
to,
he's great. That, as you've noticed, when we don't have Zach, and you're hoping to get some good analytics, some Ken Palm, some net, some Bart Torvik, all that, forget about it when it's just Todd and I. We are
yeah,
not
no,
analytics guys. Zach is
no,
our
we're feel guys. That's
yeah.
that's our
Zach's that guy. He could pull that stuff. So
right.
yeah, hopefully we can
Um,
get him back.
JB from the chat did say he would join us next year if we are short on analytics, which he'll be able to use wording that I don't understand. And I'll
Yeah.
nod and pretend I do. But you know,
When he starts talking Porpaguda, be like,
yeah.
okay, if you say
We
so.
don't know if we're supposed to put some
I
sort
don't
of
even know
warning
what
on
that
when he says
acronym
that.
means, but
Yeah.
I trust you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody, and thank you everybody that joined to let us try this out a little bit. And until Omaha wins in the first round, and we see you guys again.
Yeah,
We'll talk
sounds
later.
good.
All right.